The dying star cast a sickly orange glow across the metal corridors of Kepler Station. Dr. Veltar pressed his crystalline fingers against the observation window and watched another solar flare erupt from the surface below. His home star was collapsing, just like everything else in the Zephyrian Empire. Behind him, the research lab buzzed with desperate activity. His team of scientists worked around the clock, searching for any solution to their impossible problem. The Void Hunters had already destroyed 12 colonies in the Outer Rim. Their black ships moved like a plague across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. "Doctor, we have something," called out his assistant, a young Zephyrian named Kesseral. Her blue crystalline skin flickered with nervous energy as she gestured toward the main display screen. Veltar turned from the window and approached the ancient artifact sitting in the center of the lab. They had found it 3 weeks ago in the ruins of the Altair colony, just before the Void Hunters had turned that world into ash. The device was unlike anything in their databases, a smooth metallic sphere covered in strange markings that seemed to shift when no one was looking. Directly at them, the translation matrix finally decoded part of the inscription, Kesseral explained, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "It appears to be some kind of distress beacon, but the origin coordinates point to an uncharted system in the outer spiral arm." Veltar studied the readings on his scanner. The energy patterns were completely foreign, unlike any technology the Zephyrians had encountered in their 1,000 years of space travel. What kind of civilization could have created this? "Unknown, sir. The signal is very old, but the beacon is still active. It has been broadcasting a repeating message for what appears to be several thousand rotations." The door to the lab hissed open, and High Counselor Rethan entered, flanked by 2 guards. The elderly Zephyrian moved slowly, his once bright crystalline structure now dull with age and worry. "Doctor, I need your report. The Council is meeting in 1 hour to discuss our final options." Veltar bowed respectfully. "Counselor, we may have discovered something significant. This artifact contains a beacon from an unknown species. If we can modify our long-range transmitters, we might be able to contact them." Rethan approached the artifact, his ancient eyes studying its surface. "And what makes you think this unknown species would help us? Every other civilization we have contacted either cannot help or refuses to get involved with the Void Hunters." "Because, sir, whoever created this beacon was asking for help themselves. The message is fragmentary, but it clearly contains a request for military assistance. A species that openly asks for military aid might be different from the peaceful traders we usually encounter." The High Counselor was quiet for several long moments. Outside the station, another solar flare painted the walls in angry orange light. "How long would it take to modify our transmitters?" 6 hours, sir. Maybe 7? Do it. If this fails, we evacuate the remaining colonies to the deep void and hope the Void Hunters lose interest in empty space." As Rethan left the lab, Veltar immediately began coordinating with the station's engineering team. They had one chance to reach across the galaxy and contact an unknown species. If these mysterious beings could not help, the Zephyrian Empire would become another footnote in the Void Hunters' trail of destruction. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat in the cramped control room of Deep Space Monitoring Station, Nevada. His shift partner, Dr. Lisa Parker, was hunched over a bank of computer screens analyzing radio signals from distant stars. The night shift was usually quiet, filled with routine scans and cosmic background noise. "Jake, take a look at this," Lisa called out, adjusting her headphones. "I'm picking up something weird from Sector 77 Alpha." Jake rolled his chair over to her station and studied the wavelength patterns on her screen. "Looks like standard pulsar interference to me." "That's what I thought at first, but watch this." Lisa highlighted a section of the signal and played it back at reduced speed. "See those patterns? They're too regular to be natural, and they're definitely artificial." Jake leaned closer to the screen. The signal showed clear mathematical progressions and repeated sequences that looked almost like language. "Are you thinking this might be from an alien source?" "I'm thinking we need to wake up Admiral Sullivan." Within 30 minutes, Admiral Frank Sullivan arrived at the monitoring station, along with a team of linguists and communication specialists from the nearby Space Command facility. The gruff military officer had spent his entire career preparing for the possibility of alien contact, but he had never expected it to happen on a random Tuesday night in Nevada. What do we know so far? Sullivan asked as he studied the translated fragments on the main screen. Dr. Parker pointed to several highlighted sections of text. The signal is definitely artificial and appears to be some kind of distress call. We've identified coordinates pointing to a star system approximately 400 light-years away. The message mentions something about being attacked and specifically requests military assistance. Military assistance? Sullivan's eyebrows rose. Most of our theoretical models assumed first contact would involve peaceful exploration or scientific exchange. Sir, there's more, Jake added, pulling up additional data on a secondary screen. The signal strength suggests they're using an enormous amount of power to reach us. This isn't a casual greeting. They're desperate. Admiral Sullivan studied the information for several minutes, his weathered face showing deep concentration. As a career military officer, he understood the implications of an alien species specifically asking for military help. Either they were facing a threat that required human intervention, or this could be some kind of trap. Dr. Parker, what's your assessment of the signal's authenticity? Sir, the mathematical and linguistic patterns are far too complex to be artificial. The energy signatures match what we would expect from an advanced civilization using massive transmitters. In my professional opinion, this is genuine. Sullivan nodded slowly. Jake, I want you to contact Fleet Command immediately. Tell them we have a potential first contact situation requiring immediate fleet deployment. Sir, shouldn't we try to respond to their signal first? Maybe establish basic communication? Lieutenant, if an alien species is desperate enough to broadcast a military distress call across 400 light-years of space, they don't have time for long diplomatic conversations. They need help, and they need it now. As Jake began coordinating with Fleet Command, Admiral Sullivan looked out the window at the star-filled sky above Nevada. Somewhere out there, an unknown species was fighting for survival against forces they could not defeat alone. Within hours, every available ship in the United Earth Defense Force would be preparing for humanity's first interstellar military deployment. The aliens had asked for help. They were about to get far more than they had ever imagined. 3 weeks after the desperate transmission from Kepler Station, the space around the dying star began to shimmer with unnatural light. Dr. Veltar watched from the observation deck as the first human ship materialized from hyperspace. The massive vessel was unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases, angular and powerful, with weapon systems that made their own defense platforms look like children's toys. By the crystal cores, whispered Kesseral, her blue skin flickering with amazement. Look at the size of that thing. But Veltar's attention was already shifting to the second ship that appeared, then the third, then the fourth. His crystalline fingers pressed against the viewing window as more and more human vessels dropped out of hyperspace. What had started as hope for a single ally had become something far beyond their wildest dreams. High Counselor Raythan rushed onto the observation deck, his ancient frame moving faster than it had in decades. How many ships are there? 47 so far, sir, replied Kesseral, her scanner readings updating constantly as new vessels appeared. And more are still arriving. The lead human ship, identified by its broadcasting signature as the UEF Valiant, moved closer to Kepler Station. Its communication array activated and a voice speaking perfect Zephyrian filled the station's speakers. Kepler Station. This is Captain Alex Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call and have come to assist. Request permission to dock and coordinate relief efforts. Veltar stared at the communication panel in shock. They learned our language in 3 weeks. Not just learned it, Raythan said quietly. They speak it better than some of our own colonists. Captain Rodriguez stood in the docking bay of Kepler Station 30 minutes later, flanked by Commander Kate Williams and a team of human officers. The Zephyrians had expected perhaps a small diplomatic party, but what stepped off the human shuttle was clearly a military command structure ready for war. The captain was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the alien station. His uniform was practical rather than decorative, and the weapons his team carried were obviously designed for serious combat rather than ceremonial purposes. Dr. Veltar, I presume, Rodriguez said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting that their translators had quickly identified. We came as soon as we decoded your message. Veltar gently touched the human's hand with his crystalline fingers, amazed at the warmth and solidity of the alien flesh. Captain Rodriguez, we are grateful beyond words. But we only expected perhaps a single scout ship. Why did you bring so many vessels? Commander Williams stepped forward, her blonde hair pulled back in a military style that spoke of efficiency and readiness. Doctor, when someone sends a distress call asking for military assistance, we don't send scouts. We send a fleet. But surely this level of response is excessive for our small conflict. Rodriguez and Williams exchanged a look that made Veltar suddenly aware that humans might view warfare very differently than peaceful Zephyrians. Doctor, Rodriguez said carefully, why don't you tell us about these void hunters? The briefing took place in Kepler Station's main conference room, with human and Zephyrian officers seated around a holographic display showing the current state of the war. Veltar presented the grim statistics while High Counselor Rethan provided political context. The Void Hunters have destroyed 12 of our colonies in the past 6 months, Veltar explained, manipulating the display to show the pattern of attacks. They consume everything organic and convert it into more of their kind. No species has been able to stop them. Commander Williams studied the tactical data with professional interest. What's their fleet composition? Unknown. Their ships appear to be grown rather than built, and they adapt quickly to any resistance. The Altair Defense Force held them off for 3 days before being overwhelmed. 3 days? Rodriguez looked surprised. How many ships did Altair have? 15 patrol cruisers and a space station with defensive platforms. The human officers were quiet for several long moments. Finally, Williams spoke up. Captain, I think we need to show them the fleet roster. Rodriguez nodded and activated his portable display unit. The holographic image showed the current human force deployment around Kepler Station. Veltar's crystalline structure almost cracked with shock as he read the numbers. 47 battlecruisers, 83 destroyers, over 200 support vessels. And that's just the advance force, Rodriguez explained casually. Admiral Sullivan is bringing the main fleet within the week. Main fleet? Rethan's voice was barely a whisper. The full expeditionary force includes over 800 combat vessels plus logistics and support ships. We take requests for military assistance very seriously. Dr. Lisa Parker, who had arrived with the diplomatic team, was conducting medical scans on volunteer Zephyrian subjects in the station's science lab. What she discovered made her call Captain Rodriguez immediately. Sir, you need to see this, she said, displaying her scanner readings on the main screen. According to these readings, the Zephyrians evolved on a planet with gravity about 1/3 of Earth normal, minimal radiation exposure, and atmospheric conditions that would be considered paradise by human standards. Rodriguez studied the data. And that means what exactly? It means they're incredibly fragile by our standards, but it also means they probably view us as nearly indestructible. Their planet never had ice ages, major volcanic activity, or mass extinction events. They evolved in conditions that would be like a peaceful garden compared to Earth. Commander Williams joined the conversation. Doctor, what would they think of our planet? Parker pulled up Earth's environmental data and translated it into Zephyrian measurements. Based on their classification system, they would rate Earth as a Class 12 death world. That's the highest danger rating in their database. A death world? Rodriguez looked intrigued rather than concerned. Captain, from their perspective, humans evolved under conditions that should have killed us thousands of times over. The gravity alone would crush most Zephyrians, and that's before considering the radiation, temperature extremes, and toxic atmospheric components. Back in the conference room, Veltar was reviewing the human fleet specifications with growing amazement. Each individual human vessel carried more firepower than entire Zephyrian defense fleets. Captain Rodriguez, he said slowly, may I ask what kind of threats your species faces that requires such powerful military forces? Well, we've had wars with each other for most of our history, Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly. Plus, we've dealt with asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, ice ages, and various other planetary disasters. Building strong military forces just seemed like common sense. You survived ice ages, several of them, and a few asteroid impacts that wiped out most life on the planet. Humans are pretty good at adapting to difficult situations. Commander Williams added, our planet has been trying to kill us since we evolved. It makes you tough after a while. High Counselor Rethan looked around the room at the casual confidence of the human officers. These beings spoke of planetary disasters and military conflicts the way Zephyrians discussed weather patterns. Captain, I must ask, Are all human worlds as dangerous as Earth? Actually, Earth is considered pretty mild compared to some of our colony worlds. We have settlements on planets with acid rain, crushing atmospheric pressure, and surface temperatures that would melt most metals. Veltar realized that the Zephyrians had not just contacted another species for help. They had accidentally awakened something that viewed their impossible war as just another problem to solve. The Void Hunters had never encountered anything like humanity before. Outside the station, more human ships continued to arrive, each one adding to the growing armada that would soon bring the galaxy's first taste of human warfare. The peaceful crystalline beings watched in awe as their desperate gamble transformed into something far beyond their wildest hopes. The Deathworlders had answered their call, and they had come prepared for war. Colonel Mike Henderson stood on the bridge of the reconnaissance ship UEF Falcon, watching the tactical display as his team prepared for their first mission into Void Hunter territory. The past week had been spent gathering intelligence from Zephyrian survivors and analyzing whatever data the crystalline beings had managed to collect during their losing war. "Colonel, we're approaching the outer edge of the Talon system," reported Lieutenant Ben Clark from the pilot station. "Sensors are picking up multiple energy signatures ahead." Henderson studied the readings on his screen. The destroyed Zephyrian colony of Talon Prime had fallen to the Void Hunters just 2 months ago, making it the perfect location to observe the enemy without triggering a major confrontation. "Take us in slow and quiet, Lieutenant. I want to see what we're dealing with before they know we're here." The Falcon moved silently through the debris field that had once been a thriving Zephyrian settlement. Twisted metal and crystalline fragments drifted past the viewports, all that remained of 3 million peaceful aliens who had never harmed anyone. "My God," whispered Dr. Lisa Parker, who had joined the mission to study Void Hunter technology. "They didn't just destroy the colony, they consumed it." Henderson nodded grimly as they passed what had once been the planet's surface. The entire world had been stripped down to bare rock, with massive machines still working to extract the last traces of organic matter from the soil. There, Clark pointed to a cluster of dark shapes moving near the planet's former moon. Void Hunter Patrol Group. The enemy ships were unlike anything in human military databases. They appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that pulsed with sickly green light. Each vessel was roughly the size of a human destroyer, but their weapon systems were completely alien in design. "Parker, are you getting readings on their technology?" Henderson asked quietly. "Yes, sir, but it's disturbing. Those ships are partially biological. The hull materials are some kind of living metal that can adapt and repair itself. The weapons appear to be plasma-based, but they're powered by what looks like organic neural networks." "Neural networks? You mean they're using brains to power their ships?" "That's exactly what I mean, Colonel. And based on the energy patterns, those brains are from the species they've conquered." Henderson felt a cold anger building in his chest. The Void Hunters were not just conquerors, they were monsters who violated everything decent beings held sacred. "Lieutenant Clark, take us closer. I want detailed scans of their weapon systems and defensive capabilities." "Sir, if they detect us, they won't. Earth didn't survive thousands of years of warfare by being careless. Trust your training." The Falcon moved silently through the outer system, its advanced stealth systems keeping it hidden from Void Hunter sensors. Henderson's team methodically cataloged enemy positions, ship types, and tactical patterns while Dr. Parker analyzed their technology. What they discovered over the next 3 days changed everything the humans thought they knew about the war. Back on Kepler Station, Admiral Frank Sullivan had arrived with the main human fleet. The aging military commander stood in the station's expanded command center, studying reports from Henderson's reconnaissance mission, while Captain Rodriguez and High Counselor Redhan looked on. "The enemy force is larger than we initially estimated," Sullivan said, manipulating the holographic display to show Void Hunter positions throughout the sector. "They have a mothership approximately 15 kilometers long, supported by over 3,000 smaller vessels." Redhan's crystalline structure dimmed with despair. "Admiral, that's 10 times larger than any force we've ever faced. How can we possibly—" "Counselor, size isn't everything in warfare," Sullivan interrupted gently. "What matters is how effectively you use what you have." Dr. Parker entered the command center, carrying data tablets filled with her analysis of Void Hunter technology. "Admiral, I have the technical specifications you requested." "What did you find, Doctor?" The Void Hunters are definitely using biological components in their technology, but that creates vulnerabilities. Their ships are controlled by hive mind networks that rely on quantum entanglement for coordination. Disrupt the network and the entire fleet becomes confused and uncoordinated. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. What kind of disruption are we talking about? The neural networks they use are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also fragile. A properly designed quantum virus could cascade through their entire command structure, essentially giving them the electronic equivalent of a stroke. Admiral Sullivan smiled for the first time since arriving in the Zephyrian system. Doctor, how long would it take to develop such a virus? Working with the Zephyrian scientists, maybe a week. Their understanding of quantum mechanics is actually more advanced than ours in some areas. Do it. Rodriguez, I want you to coordinate with Colonel Henderson on tactical planning. If we can disrupt their command structure even temporarily, it might give us the opening we need. Meanwhile, on the human ship UEF Marathon, Marine Sergeant Amy Walsh was conducting training exercises with a group of Zephyrian volunteers. The crystalline beings had insisted on participating in the coming battle, despite their obvious physical limitations compared to humans. Remember, in close-quarters combat, speed and positioning matter more than strength, Walsh explained to her alien students. Your crystalline structure makes you naturally resistant to energy weapons, which gives you an advantage in boarding actions. One of the Zephyrians, a young soldier named Kelnod, raised his hand. Sergeant Walsh, how do humans train for combat? Your species seems to have no fear of violence. Walsh considered the question carefully. It's not that we have no fear, Kelnod. It's that we've learned to function despite the fear. Earth has been dangerous since before humans existed. We evolved to deal with threats that would kill most species. But how do you remain calm during battle? Practice. Lots and lots of practice. On Earth, we have a saying, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. Dr. Veltar observed the training session with fascination. The humans moved through combat scenarios with fluid precision, their actions coordinated by hand signals and subtle communications that spoke of extensive experience working together under pressure. Sergeant Walsh, he said during a break in the exercises, may I ask how human military forces are organized? Sure, Doc. We have different branches for different types of combat. Army for ground operations, Navy for space and water, Marines for rapid deployment and boarding actions, Air Force for atmospheric operations. Each branch trains constantly for their specific mission. And all human settlements have these military forces. Every colony, every station, every major population center. We learned a long time ago that the universe is a dangerous place, and the best way to keep peace is to be ready for war. Veltar made notes on his datapad, amazed once again at the difference between human and Zephyrian approaches to survival. Where his people had developed art, philosophy, and peaceful exploration, humans had created the most sophisticated military machine he had ever encountered. Colonel Henderson's voice came over the station's communication system, interrupting Veltar's thoughts. All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have a priority intelligence update. The command center was packed when Henderson began his briefing. His reconnaissance team had discovered something that changed their understanding of the Void Hunter threat. The enemy mothership isn't just a command vessel, Henderson explained, displaying detailed scans on the main screen. It's a factory ship. They're using it to convert captured organic matter into new Void Hunter units. Based on the production rates we observed, they can replace their entire fleet every 6 months. Admiral Sullivan studied the data with growing concern. How many ships are they producing? Approximately 50 new vessels per day, sir. And that's just from one mothership. Intelligence suggests they have at least 12 of these factory ships operating in different sectors of the galaxy. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Void Hunters were not just an invading army. They were a growing plague that would continue to spread until someone found a way to stop their production capabilities. High Counselor Redhan spoke quietly. Admiral, even with your impressive fleet, how can we fight an enemy that can replace its losses faster than we can inflict them? Sullivan looked around the room at the assembled human and Zephyrian officers. The same way Earth has always dealt with impossible odds, Counselor. We adapt, we improvise, and we hit them where they're weakest. And where is that? The Admiral smiled grimly. We're going to find out. Admiral Sullivan stood before the massive holographic display in the UEF Titan's war room, surrounded by his battle group commanders and Zephyrian military leaders. The past 2 weeks had been spent preparing for the largest military operation in human history, and now the moment had arrived to put their plan into action. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Operation Deathblow," Sullivan announced, highlighting different sections of the tactical map. "We will split our forces into 3 battle groups. Captain Rodriguez will lead Battle Group Alpha to defend the core Zephyrian worlds. Colonel Henderson commands Battle Group Beta for rapid response and evacuation operations. I will personally lead Battle Group Gamma in a direct assault on the Void Hunter mothership." High Counselor Rhett Hahn studied the deployment with obvious concern. "Admiral, you are dividing your forces against a numerically superior enemy. Every military theory we know suggests this is unwise. Counselor, human military doctrine is built around mobility and initiative rather than defensive positioning. We learned long ago that the best defense is often a strong offense." Commander Sarah Taylor, captain of the destroyer UEF Phoenix, raised her hand. "Sir, what's our engagement protocol if we encounter forces larger than anticipated?" "Standard human doctrine, Commander. Adapt, improvise, and make the enemy react to your movements instead of the other way around. The Void Hunters have never faced opponents who could match their aggression, so we're going to give them something they've never experienced." The first test of human combat capabilities came sooner than expected. While the main fleets were still positioning for the primary assault, Void Hunter scouts attacked the Nexus colony, one of the remaining Zephyrian settlements in the Outer Rim. Commander Taylor's destroyer squadron happened to be conducting patrol operations nearby when the distress call came through. Without waiting for orders from higher command, she immediately ordered her ships to intercept the enemy force. "All ships, this is Phoenix Actual," Taylor broadcast to her squadron. "We have multiple Void Hunter vessels attacking civilian targets. Engage immediately and show them what human firepower looks like." The UEF Phoenix and her 3 sister ships dropped out of hyperspace directly into the middle of the Void Hunter attack force. The alien vessels, accustomed to facing frightened and desperate resistance from peaceful species, suddenly found themselves confronting something entirely different. "Target the lead bioship," Taylor ordered from her command chair. "Full spread of quantum torpedoes and don't give them time to adapt to our tactics." The human weapons struck the Void Hunter vessels with devastating effect. Where Zephyrian energy beams had barely scratched their adaptive armor, human quantum torpedoes tore through their hulls like they were made of paper. But what truly shocked the Void Hunters was what happened next. Instead of falling back to defensive positions like every other species they had encountered, the human ships pressed their attack even more aggressively. "Phoenix is taking heavy damage," to the port weapons array reported. Taylor's tactical officer as alien plasma beams raked across their hull. "Reroute power from non-essential systems and maintain attack formation," Taylor replied calmly. "These things are used to opponents who retreat when damaged. Let's show them what happens when they pick a fight with Deathworlders." Back on Kepler Station, Dr. Veltar watched the battle through long-range sensors, his crystalline structure flickering with amazement and horror. The human ships sustained damage that would have forced any Zephyrian vessel to withdraw from combat, but they continued fighting with the same intensity as when the battle began. "How are they still operational?" he asked Dr. Parker, who was monitoring the engagement from the station's command center. "Human ships are built with redundant systems and damage control protocols that assume they're going to take heavy punishment," Parker explained. "On Earth we call it fighting hurt. The ability to continue functioning despite injuries is essential for survival on a death world." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Foster's cruiser, UEF Resilient, provided a perfect example of this philosophy. A Void Hunter plasma cannon had disabled the ship's main power core, leaving the vessel running on auxiliary systems that provided barely 20% of normal capacity. Any other species would have considered the ship effectively destroyed, but Foster and his crew simply adapted their tactics to work with what they had available. "Engineering, how much power can you give me?" Foster asked over the ship's internal communication system. "Sir, we can maintain life support, minimal shields, and either weapons or engines, but not both," came the reply from his chief engineer. "Give me weapons. We'll use maneuvering thrusters for positioning and hit them with everything we have at close range." The Resilient limped toward the nearest Void Hunter vessel, moving slowly on thrusters alone while her crew prepared for a point-blank engagement. The alien ship, assuming the damaged human vessel was retreating, moved closer to deliver a finishing blow. Instead, Foster's ship unleashed every weapon she had remaining directly into the Void Hunter's hull, at a range of less than 500 meters. The explosion destroyed both vessels, but the human crew had already evacuated to escape pods, while the Void Hunter bioship died with all hands aboard. Dr. Veltar watched Foster and his crew being rescued by another human ship, their casual acceptance of near-death experiences leaving him speechless. They deliberately sacrificed their own vessel to ensure the enemy's destruction. "It's called a kamikaze attack," Dr. Parker said quietly. "Humans have been using that tactic for thousands of years when the situation requires it." The battle at Nexus Colony ended with the complete destruction of the Void Hunter attack force. But the real significance was what happened afterward. News of the engagement spread throughout the galaxy at faster-than-light speed, carried by traders and refugees who had witnessed something unprecedented. For the first time in recorded history, someone had not just defeated the Void Hunters, they had completely destroyed an enemy force without losing a single ship. The humans had taken heavy damage, but every vessel remained operational and ready for continued combat. On the Void Hunter mothership, the collective consciousness that controlled their species experienced something it had never felt before: uncertainty. The neural networks that connected every bioship in their fleet carried reports of the engagement, and for the first time, the hive mind began to question whether their expansion into this sector had been a mistake. Meanwhile, in the deep void between star systems, other alien species that had hidden from the Void Hunters began to emerge from their hiding places. The Altarian refugees contacted human forces, offering intelligence and support. The Rigel Trade Confederation sent ships to assist with logistics. Even the mysterious Void Watchers, who had observed the galaxy's conflicts for millennia without interfering, sent a diplomatic message expressing their interest in meeting these new Deathworlders. Sergeant Amy Walsh was conducting boarding action training aboard the UEF Marathon when the news arrived that other alien species were joining their cause. The Zephyrian volunteers in her unit were amazed at how quickly the galaxy's political situation had changed. "Sergeant Walsh, why are so many species suddenly willing to fight alongside humans?" asked Kelnod during a break in their exercises. Walsh considered the question while checking her weapons and equipment. Fear is a powerful motivator, but hope is even stronger. For the first time since the Void Hunters started their expansion, someone has proven they can be beaten. But humans are just one species among thousands in the galaxy. Maybe, but we're the species that evolved on a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill us. Every other civilization developed in peaceful conditions, so they never learned how to fight a war of survival. We've been preparing for this kind of conflict our entire evolutionary history. Colonel Henderson's rapid response. Teams were already deploying to evacuate threatened colonies and establish forward bases in contested systems. His Marines worked alongside alien forces, teaching them human tactical doctrines and learning about the local conditions they would face in the coming battles. The galaxy watched in amazement as human ships appeared in system after system, not as conquerors but as protectors. Every species that had suffered under Void Hunter attacks suddenly found themselves with allies who not only understood warfare, but seemed to enjoy the challenge of impossible. Odds Admiral Sullivan received regular reports from his deployed forces, each one confirming what he had suspected from the beginning. The Void Hunters were powerful and numerous, but they had never faced opponents who could match their ruthlessness while maintaining their humanity. "Sir," Captain Rodriguez reported during one of their daily briefings, "all 3 battle groups are in position. The enemy mothership has been located and our quantum virus is ready for deployment." Sullivan looked around the war room at his assembled officers, human and alien working together toward a common goal. "Very well, Captain. Signal all ships. Operation Deathblow is now active. Let's show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocence in the presence of Deathworlders." The final battle was about to begin. The Void Hunter mothership hung in space like a diseased moon, its 15-kilometer hull pulsing with sickly green light, as millions of organic neural networks coordinated the activities of 3,000 bioships. For centuries, this vessel had been the heart of an unstoppable plague that consumed entire civilizations without mercy. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UEF Titan, watching his fleet approach the enemy stronghold through the main view screen. Battle Group Gamma consisted of 200 of humanity's finest warships, each one crewed by volunteers who understood they might not survive the next few hours. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple targeting locks from enemy vessels," reported his tactical officer. "They're moving to intercept us in a standard defensive formation." "Standard formation?" Sullivan smiled grimly. "They still don't understand what they're dealing with." "Signal all ships. Execute attack pattern Delta 7. The human fleet suddenly scattered in dozens of different directions, each ship following a seemingly random course that confused the Void Hunter hive mind. Where alien species had always attacked in organized formations that could be predicted and countered, the humans moved like a swarm of angry hornets with no apparent coordination. But there was coordination, just not the kind the Void Hunters had ever encountered. Each human captain made independent tactical decisions based on real-time battlefield conditions, creating a chaotic pattern that was impossible to predict. But devastatingly, effective Commander Sarah Taylor's destroyer squadron hit the enemy's left flank, while Colonel Henderson's Marines prepared for boarding actions on the right. Captain Rodriguez coordinated the center assault while Dr. Parker monitored the quantum virus deployment from her position aboard a heavily shielded research vessel. The first wave of human attacks struck the Void Hunter fleet with precision that left the alien hive mind reeling. Quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons tore through bioship hulls while electronic warfare specialists jammed their communication networks. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters found themselves fighting an opponent that could match their aggression while maintaining tactical superiority. "Parker, how's the virus deployment going?" Admiral Sullivan asked over the communication channel as his flagship's weapons blazed against a cluster of enemy vessels. "Admiral, the quantum virus is propagating through their network faster than expected," Dr. Parker replied, her voice tense with excitement. The Zephyrian quantum mechanics equations were perfect for this application. "We should see cascade failures in their command structure within the next 10 minutes. But 10 minutes was a long time in space combat, especially when facing an enemy that outnumbered them 15-1. Human ships throughout the battle zone took heavy damage as Void Hunter plasma weapons found their targets. The UEF Defiant exploded in a brilliant fireball after her captain rammed his destroyer into a bioship twice its size. The cruiser UEF Valor lost half her crew when enemy boarders breached her hull, though the surviving humans fought them off in hand-to-hand combat that left the alien invader shocked at human resilience. "Commander, Taylor's Phoenix had lost main engines and was fighting on maneuvering thrusters, alone when the quantum virus finally reached the Void Hunter mothership's central processing core. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the alien fleet. Thousands of bioships suddenly lost coordination with their command structure. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began colliding with each other as their neural networks suffered the electronic equivalent of massive strokes. The hive mind that had controlled their species for millennia fractured into confused fragments that could no longer communicate effectively. "Now," Admiral Sullivan shouted over the fleet communication channel, "all ships focus fire on the mothership's core sections. Take out their production facilities before they can adapt to the virus." The concentrated firepower of the human fleet struck the Void Hunter mothership like the fist of an angry god. Quantum torpedoes penetrated deep into the vessel's organic hull while plasma cannons carved through the biological factories that had been producing new enemy ships for centuries. Colonel Henderson led the final boarding action, taking a team of Marines directly into the mothership's central core through a breach created by the bombardment. Fighting through corridors filled with dying alien technology and desperate enemy defenders, his team reached the primary neural processing center that controlled the entire Void Hunter collective. "Admiral, we're at the core," Henderson reported, his voice strained from combat. "The quantum virus has damaged their central intelligence, but it's trying to repair itself. We need to physically destroy the processing matrix to make sure it never recovers. Do it, Colonel. End this nightmare." Henderson placed explosive charges throughout the neural processing center, while his Marines held off the few remaining Void Hunter defenders. As the timer counted down, he looked around at the alien technology that had terrorized the galaxy for so long. In just a few seconds, centuries of conquest and genocide would finally come to an end. The explosion tore through the mothership's core, severing the neural networks that connected every Void Hunter vessel in the fleet. Without their collective consciousness to guide them, The remaining bioships became nothing more than mindless drifters in space. The plague that had consumed 12 civilizations died in a burst of human determination and alien fire. The victory celebration aboard Kepler Station 3 days later brought together representatives from dozens of species that had hidden from the Void Hunters for generations. Dr. Veltar stood beside High Counselor Rhett Hun, watching as Admiral Sullivan addressed the assembled delegates. "The threat that terrorized this galaxy for centuries is over," Sullivan announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the crowded station. "But this victory belongs to all of us, human, Zephyrian, Altarian, and every other species that chose to stand together against tyranny." The response was overwhelming. Species after species stepped forward to offer alliance with humanity and the Zephyrians. The Rigel Trade Confederation proposed economic partnerships. The Void Watchers, emerging from millennia of isolation, offered to share ancient knowledge about galactic history. Even former enemies of various alien civilizations requested human mediation to resolve their conflicts peacefully. Dr. Parker worked with Zephyrian scientists to establish the Galactic Defense Alliance, a permanent organization dedicated to protecting peaceful civilizations from future threats. The headquarters would be jointly operated from Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld, with rapid response fleets stationed throughout the galaxy. Lieutenant Jake Morrison and Dr. Lisa Parker, whose detection of the original distress signal had started the entire chain of events, were honored as the first humans to make alien contact. Their monitoring station in Nevada became the center for ongoing interstellar communications, processing thousands of messages from species throughout the galaxy who wanted to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Captain Rodriguez was appointed as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council, a position that would involve coordinating defense efforts and peaceful exploration missions throughout known space. His experience working with alien allies during the war made him the perfect choice for building lasting partnerships between species. Commander Taylor received command of the new UEF Phoenix, a state-of-the-art vessel built with both human and alien technology. Her ship would serve as the flagship for joint human-alien exploration missions to investigate unknown regions of the galaxy and search for other civilizations that might need assistance. Colonel Henderson established the Galactic Marine Corps, a combined military force that trained soldiers from multiple species in human combat doctrines. His Marines would serve as rapid response teams for humanitarian crises and defensive operations throughout Allied space. High Counselor Rhett Hun stood in the observation lounge of Kepler Station, watching as human and alien ships worked together to patrol the former Void Hunter territory. The dying star that had once threatened his people now served as a memorial to those lost in the war, while new space stations built with joint technology served as beacons of hope for the future. "Dr. Veltar," he said to his longtime friend and colleague, "what do you think our ancestors would say about all this?" Veltar's crystalline structure flickered with what humans had learned to recognize as Zephyrian laughter. "I think they would be amazed that our desperate plea for help resulted in humanity becoming the galaxy's protectors. And what do you think of our new human allies?" "I think we accidentally did something far more important than saving ourselves, Counselor. We introduced the galaxy to a species that proves strength and compassion can exist together. The humans could have easily conquered us after defeating the Void Hunters, but instead they chose to build partnerships and protect the innocent." Outside the station, Admiral Sullivan's flagship prepared to depart for Earth, where he would coordinate the establishment of the new Galactic Defense Force. The man who had answered an alien distress call with an entire fleet was about to return home as humanity's first interstellar military commander. The final message of the day came from Earth itself, as President Martinez addressed the combined human and alien populations throughout the galaxy. To